You're listening to this week's episode of the Vacation Rental Business in Today's World podcast. You're about to start transforming your business and life with the information found here. We interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in the vacation short-term rental industry and supporting businesses. The information found here is a combination of brain science, transformational thinking, safety and loss prevention, and vacation short-term rental knowledge and experiences, all rolled into one to help you and your business to achieve levels you never thought possible. I am glad you are here, and now please welcome your host, Eric Thibodeau.
Hello everyone, how are y'all doing? We're here with Breece and Ryan Sailor with Beyond Pricing. Gentlemen, how are y'all doing?
Hey, very good. How are you?
Good. Where are y'all at right now?
I'm up in San Francisco.
Okay.
I'm usually in San Francisco. I'm in Orange County, California right now. Escaped San Francisco during these interesting times.
Yeah.
Bit more space, bit better weather.
So normally I'm in Houston, but today I'm in Cairo, Egypt. And that's another long story, but just shows you the diversity of locations and how we can work remote and everything else in today's world, right? Great. So let's go through and just give a brief update of your work and your experiences. We'll start with Jeff.
Yeah. So Jeff, I'm the head of our revenue management team at Beyond Pricing. What that means is we tend to work mostly on the algorithm that's automated prices. We're monitoring all of what's going on in the market, looking at booking pace, lead time, and then how that functions into the algorithm to spit out the best prices. So we're really, pretty much just pricing nerds where we sit right now. So we like to jump into the data, much more comfortable in Excel than Word probably. And then, helping to communicate and sort of spread these ideas or data across our industry. In my background, I don't actually come from revenue management. I come from economic forecasting. So coming up with, using models with complex data, pushing out the data, and then sort of explaining and justifying them.
Great. Ryan?
So my name is Ryan Sailor. I'm a revenue manager. I'm here at Beyond Pricing, so I work alongside Jeff. I work to what Jeff was speaking about with our algorithm and launching markets and tweaking pricing, but I also work directly with a few property managers to get real-time insights as to what's actually going on out there. So work a lot with quite a few of our users. My background, I went to school for hospitality, and then my career started in actually hotel revenue management. And then about two and a half years ago, I switched to Beyond Pricing to jump on the vacation rental side. So it's been exciting just seeing revenue management evolve, even just over the past 4 or 5 years.
So maybe you're the closest one so far, Ryan. When I talk to people, I said, how did you get in this whole vacation rental business? And maybe you were kind of on the path there from the beginning, but it started in hotels, right?
Yeah. And it's tricky. I think part of the beauty of vacation rentals is everybody's coming from everywhere. So it brings a lot of good insight. And, so far in the industry, we're just kind of taking pieces from the rest of travel and making it work for the markets and the types of properties that we work with. But yeah, we're starting to see more and more revenue management in general just develop with courses and education. So it's great to see more focus and intent on the subject overall too.
Yeah. Really good. Yeah. I think it's something in today's world, we really need to be focusing how we're managing revenue and not just the dollar side, just how we're doing all the offers and the pricing and all the parts that make up revenue management. So it kind of leads to, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh yeah. And it does differ, our industry does differ a lot from hotels and airlines who have been doing revenue management for decades now. Right. And that's what, Ryan and I talk about it a lot. Like that's what sort of drew us to this, being the pricing nerds, right? It's like, okay, there is no sort of uniform best practice for pricing or revenue management in vacation rentals. And to be part of like coming up with that theory, putting that in practice is a really like attractive puzzle, attractive problem to be solving with a lot of cool people. So.
Yeah, and I think just the whole part about the diversity of vacation rentals, just the geographic, the different types, the different venues, the different destinations, the different offerings. It's not like I'm going to go, a plane is a plane. Maybe I'm too simple, right? But I think it's definitely more complex. Would you agree in revenue management and pricing in the vacation rental industry today?
Yeah. To Jeff's point too, it's not as easy as just taking the same concepts or the same tools from hotels, airlines, or elsewhere and applying them. And that's sort of where the fun of our job comes in. But I think to your point, Eric, too, the biggest thing is like, it's not just a plane, it's an individual home. you're not selling a box of rooms or seats that are all fairly uniform to a wide audience. You're really have to hone in on that unique level of not only pricing, but distribution, marketing, operations even. So that's one of the biggest things that, you can even see directly in Beyond Pricing, that from the beginning we had to change up, what we were learning from the rest of the industry.
Yeah, I'd almost say unique sort of sense of our industry, right? Because everyone knows what the unique homes, but it's also all the unique owners, even the unique backgrounds of property managers, right? The long family-run companies, the new urban people, the part-time people, right? The unique locations, the unique guests sometimes too. It's like everything about every aspect is unique, and that creates, lots of the impact of everyone being subjective to creates lots of challenges that probably hotel and airlines, have to a lesser degree. So it just creates some more challenges, but I think the industry's grown so much that it's overcoming those challenges as we go. Right, it's making them aware, but also pushing through them.
Yeah, I agree. And one of my philosophies, and I'm sure you guys would agree. I mean, done is better than perfect, right? We don't have a perfect model to do this, but we're working with it and we're adapting as the industry grows. You agree?
Oh yeah, and it's growing at an insane pace too. So it's
Yes.
in that sense too, right? Like I think all of last year can speak to the roller coaster ride of the vacation rental industry, but it was a little scary there for a minute, and then it got really fun just with so much changing day to day. And I think the industry was poised to really take that on well, just rolling with the punches and trying to adapt very quickly. I mean, that's something that I didn't see as much working in hotels. There's a little bit longer of a process for maybe trying a new strategy or implementing a new tool. But with how the vacation rental industry is built, it can be pretty easy to change up a strategy or adapt and react very quickly, which is fun.
Great. What is revenue management? We've kind of talked about that term a little bit, but what is it?
Yeah, I think I always joke about like the old school definition of, finding the right price, the right customer for the right property at the right time. And that's true, but to me it's all about just like optimizing perishable inventory, right? Like we've got a timeline on, when we can sell tomorrow night. So that coupled with like market dynamics and pricing and an entire revenue management strategy just sort of flows into there. But that to me is sort of the crux of it, just dealing with this inventory that, when it comes to tomorrow, we can't sell it anymore. So figuring out the best way to sell that and having all those factors come into play really is the entirety of revenue management for me.
Great. And Jeff, why is it really important in today's vacation rental world that we maybe use some type of revenue management or a pricing tool like Beyond Pricing?
So I definitely think it's important, and I think if you asked me this a year ago, I'd have a different answer. If you asked me maybe next year, I'd probably have a different answer too. I think a year ago we'd say you need to understand the nuances of your market. Having 4, 5, or 6 pricing seasons isn't enough to capture and optimize your revenue throughout the year, depending on where you are. Like it's those subtle changes that over time really add up to increase your revenue. I still think that's just as important. I will think, going through 2020 and into 2021, so much has changed that I think some of the biggest tools and I think add the most benefit to having, a high-tech revenue management platform or pricing service is the speed of change. When things are changing so quickly, as we saw in that April, May, June period, where we went from some of the worst time to some of the best times in some markets, is you have to adapt your pricing strategy very fast. And that can be a lot of work. People used to take a month to set their pricing seasons, and now we're asking them to basically rethink how the world works every week during that period. Maybe the speed of change has slowed down a little bit into 2021, but it's still much faster than it was in 2019. Working from anywhere like you right now, school breaks, virus rollout, all these different things that are changing. And so I think these tools, they give people, they can change their price so quickly to react to things. So having one place where you can look at how is my portfolio doing? How am I doing compared to last year? How am I doing versus the market? Even just these simple concepts, even just an occupancy alone, let's really dumb it down and oversimplify it. Being able to look at that and then realize, hey, these specific dates or these specific listings, and then go make just quick changes. I think that is kind of the biggest benefit for sort of a pricing system.
So, and these were some of the things that basically Beyond Pricing learned in 2020 and have incorporated into the algorithm as we're going on now?
Yeah, so we updated the algorithm a bunch to deal with sort of, all these cancellations that were coming in during that period. And also updating sort of our idea of our last minute discounting and all these things as the booking pace had shortened so much. We've also realized, hey, it wasn't just lowering the price to sort of try and get demand really bad. It's like that comeback that happened in June for lots of these drive to markets. I know not everyone's in them, but if we just think about those markets for a bit, was so profound that unless you could, instead of decreasing your prices, you were increasing them and could do that over a week or two period, you may have missed out on what was, a record, at least a record fall and probably a record summer for you.
Yeah, I mean, we had
and so we took those lessons to realize, hey, we could do some of that, and let's also put it forward to this year too, so that booking paces is doing well now. We can talk about that later on, but like if it stops tomorrow because of something in the news or jumps up again tomorrow, the algorithm is in place to protect against that and help you capture the upside.
Yeah, I mean, last summer we saw people canceled for various reasons, well after the 30-day window for us. And it was almost to the point where we'd say, don't worry, we'll refund your money in full, which we never would have done in the past. But just as you said, we were rebooking within 24 hours at a higher rate. It was unbelievable. I mean, it could have been the next week or the next 2 days. It didn't matter. It was just unbelievable. Unbelievable change.
Yeah. And I think speaking to sort of the other side of things for last year too, like urban property managers or even some international markets that still to this day are incredibly slow and never saw that pent up demand come in. We started talking to property managers less about pricing and more about distribution strategies, marketing strategies, cancellation policies, things like that. Because at a certain point in a slow market, you can drop the price all you want, but no one's booking if you don't have eyes on your property or if you have a really, really harsh cancellation policy. So sort of we say like go beyond pricing, like look past your pricing strategy into how else you can drive bookings towards your listings. And I think for slow markets and slow property managers that had a tough 2020, that was all we were doing. So it was like these two extremes in the industry that really showed everybody, hey, maybe there is some value in adding another channel or getting my own website or finding some money to push towards marketing. That stuff really helped too. And to me, that flows into your revenue management strategy as much as pricing does. Pricing is maybe half the battle. There's so much more that goes into it too to fit into that revenue management ecosystem.
So when we take a look at your pricing tool, basically, how does it work? What's the basic premises of it, and how can we employ it as property managers?
Jeff, you can chime in too here, but the basis is, for each individual property, we have the idea of like a base price. So we typically say this is going to be around the average ADR for a given year for the property. And then you set a minimum. So the lowest minimum that you ever want to go on any night, that can feed into a property manager's take of each reservation or however low the owner wants to go. And then that plugs directly into basically a pricing curve into our algorithm for each individual market, whatever market that listing is in. And then from there, we create, at minimum, a 365 calendar of rates and pricing for each individual unit. And then that pricing curve and that algorithm gets updated constantly to react to, we saw a spike of 5% in occupancy for the market on this weekend 6 months from now. That will reflect by increasing the pricing. Or maybe we're seeing seasonality lower a little bit for like the month of February. We sort of lower that pricing for February. So there is some initial setup. And then after that, the algorithm sort of takes it away and reacts to live data coming in at the market level.
And where does the live data come from?
So a couple different sources, scraped and authoritative data. We've got, directly connected units. We've got Airbnb data, VRBO, looking at both occupancy and pricing as sort of a baseline for each market, and then how the changes in those actually impact, someone's pricing strategy.
It's designed to almost sort of automate, I would say, roughly 95% of the work a revenue manager would do if they didn't have a pricing tool with this. So we're not trying to say, hey, we're not trying to replace a revenue manager at a property manager. Like, we think it's a super important role. We're essentially trying to empower them by saying, hey, we can automate almost all of this stuff away. in terms of, the seasonality you do when thinking about high season, the pricing for certain events, and and then other more automated tasks that you may do, like gap filling or last minute discounts, all these things that we can automate away to give them back the time to really focus on where they can add the value in that whole process of revenue management. If it's just, dealing with the listings that they have the most local owners, if it's dealing with the listings that are straggling, or just focusing on certain events, if we can clear sort of all that clutter away and all those repetitive tasks and just give them the time back, it's essentially a multiplier for having a revenue manager on their team.
Great. And one of the things we've seen in the industry is the booking window is, just shrunk. And we were just on a call I mentioned to you before, and I mean, we're experiencing it. So 4-6 weeks maximum. People are booking. Not too many people are booking for the 6 months out or 3 months out. So how does Beyond Pricing tool adapt for, let's say now we have a shrinking booking window where people are wanting to book next month, but they don't want to book 8 weeks out?
Yeah, we've really seen it definitely varies by market. We've seen almost this dichotomy of people are willing to book tomorrow, they're going to show up, or they're booking for like July. But no one, with the assumption that the cancellation policy is in place and that they can get out of it, and with sometimes that things are going to be safe. But people are worried about what's happening basically next month and everything. When we look into some of these summer markets, how we take that into account. So we focus on sort of seasonality and pacing. So if bookings are coming in, we tend to lower the price. We have things like last minute discounts, with defined ranges that we can move in and out. So hey, if the booking curve has fallen in half, you don't want to discount to get a last minute reservation at the same period, or else you're going to be discounting your prime booking period. So we move those in. We also have automated things that will increase the price super far out. So if you're taking a reservation, if someone wants to book 18 months out, a year out, even 8 months now, this year seems pretty far out, that we can make sure not give that away at a low rate.
Yeah. So let's say we're booking and we're coming in like a 2 week, and we could just pick March, April, May. Does the booking tool pricing tool consider that inventory? How does inventory look, and then will it automatically drop the price or automatically increase the price as I get closer to the day maybe of booking? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the algorithm focuses mostly off occupancy. So we're looking at that. So the period that you're talking about, that April, May, for these, depending on where you are, but if we stick to sort of those seasonal drive to East Coast vacation markets, it tends to be the lower season for that. So we're aware that it's lower season, and we're going to push the rates down.
Okay. And if it were the summer, let's say it's June, July, or August, does the tool adapt to increase price as they get closer? Or is that a function of that I can say, I want it to increase as occupancy increases, or I want the price to reflect occupancy, or it automatically does it?
It'll automatically do most of that. And notice that when we have people sign up with Beyond Pricing, I don't want to over aggregate the data too much, but we tend to see people, we ask them to go lower in low season. If you're sitting at 25% occupancy for low season, like there's a lot to pick up there. Yes, it's at lower rates, and having that conversation about getting a midweek reservation at a low ADR can be painful, and owners don't like it, but sometimes it's that or no reservation. On the flip side, we also see, I think we tend to be more aggressive with some of the asks we have for high season or certain events like Christmas. We repeatedly get rates that people like just never thought to ask for before. That's not saying we go in and just say, hey, let's just ask for whatever the highest we can think of. It's like, it's calculated, it's logical, it's within the market. And then if we don't get that rate, then we can reduce it as well. But we tend to see higher occupancy in low season and higher rates in high season is typically how we tend to make our clients more money.
And so considering your experiences here, so what percentage of vacation rental managers or owners do you think are using some type of pricing tool in today's world?
I would say, I don't think we have any hard numbers, but over the past 5-6 years, Beyond Pricing started by educating people on what dynamic pricing is and the benefits. And now there are so many more players when it comes to pricing tools, and it's sort of the norm in most markets. So the days of manually inputting all your pricing in your PMS and sitting down to set pricing for the year are mostly over. And especially if we speak to someone with one on Airbnb using smart pricing or something like that, I mean, everybody's using some form of it. And if not, they're probably spending a lot of time inputting those rates or having to update them constantly. So I've seen quite a bit of adoption even over the past 2 years to sort of speak to most of the industry using some form of dynamic pricing and not the classic like couple of seasons through the year and that's about it, or like weekday weekend pricing, stuff like that. We don't see too much of anymore.
Yeah, the conversation's really shifted of like, should I consider dynamic pricing to more, how do I utilize it best, right? What's the best? Like, I know I need it to some level. What level do I need it? What level can I function at? How often should I log in? Those sort of questions. The days of seeing someone with just a flat price for a year, like we still see it once in a while, but it's thankfully sort of well behind us. But people did well with that too, and we just want to give them the tools to do better.
Right.
Yeah, I think the adoption rate comes from like the quick and easy wins you get. Like turn on dynamic pricing. Sometimes you get that crazy Christmas booking and you're like, oh wow, okay, I'll test this out for a little bit more. So it's at least in the early days and still now to a certain extent, it's easy to turn it on and get those bookings and really show people directly. The best way is just show them the money and then you got it.
And people are definitely, they want, like, I think most people say, okay, I need dynamic pricing to some level. I think also when you get into it, it is a change in the pricing theory and the prices they put that they're used to, right? And some people have been doing this for decades and decades and they know their market very well. And that change can be a bit of a shock, right? As it should be if it is a major fundamental shift. And so while we do have all this fancy algorithm and everything, we do allow them to sort of, add their touches on top of it. They know their local market. They know the owners. They know that they've walked through all of the listings, right? So, it's marrying those algorithm and having the property manager sort of use their subjective knowledge that maybe the algorithm can't capture and allowing them to input that on top. And that's going to be where we see the best results. It's not if you just let the algorithm run with it, but if you let that do 95% of the work and then you add your professional subjective knowledge on top of it, that's definitely where we see the highest return and the best results year over year.
Yeah. So how often do you think property managers or revenue managers log in? And then talk a little bit about the health score that I see in the reports that come out for the various properties.
Yeah, I think we typically recommend like if you can get in there every day, great. I think the majority of people, and depending on how many properties you have, you don't have to be in there every day. If you've got less than 10, it's probably a couple times a week. Check in on bookings, check in on some of the data and some of the stats, and go from there. But what Jeff was saying before, it's absolutely not set it and forget it. You can't just input those initial settings and forget about it for a couple weeks. You got to be in there at least reviewing what's coming in, seeing what pricing is being pushed out moving forward, and then especially try to be proactive. Like it's easy to look back at the past month or the past year and say I could have done XYZ, but if you're in the tool and looking forward, maybe just in the short term, you can identify, oh wow, like this next week looks really slow. What should I do about it? Or should I increase pricing or increase the base price for this unit? So we definitely recommend and preach getting in there at least a couple times a week, just depending on, I would just say number of listings in the portfolio, and then also the market, and then updating changes, making various changes in the actual listing. And one thing that we've sort of built into the tool, especially over the past like 2 years, is adding more stats and more info, more visuals, just to give even an intro user who maybe has one property or a property manager with 500 units, the ability to go in, look at a chart, see how well maybe they're pacing for the next 3 months, and then actually have the ability to like get actionable items from those types of charts and data to be able to say, all right, I'm pacing ahead for the next 3 months for these 10 units. What should I do about it? It's not just like, oh yeah, this looks great, yada, yada, yada. We actually make it easy to go in and make those changes and then ultimately see the results of that too, which I think is important.
Yeah, a chart for a chart's sake is pretty worthless, right? We're always trying to get the actionable items from there.
Something.
Yeah, and that's why when Ryan talks about logging in and everything, I agree, twice a week. And I think we talked about logging in. It doesn't need to be for that long, right? We set it up so you can log in, you can see how your portfolio is doing, you can easily determine which listings have the worst performance. Between, by the time you had a cup of coffee, you can go change all those prices for those listings very simply. So it's not log in for the day, it's log in for 10 minutes, check on things, a few tweaks, and go on. We understand there's a lot more that goes into being a successful property manager than just pricing, than just revenue management. It's a big part, but like there's a lot of other things people are doing, and we're trying to give time back for those. Much like safety with you and everything, there's a lot of aspects people don't always think about.
Exactly. So what are some key metrics we should be reviewing when we're, using the tool?
My big one that I always preach, and I've already talked about it, is pace data. If you're looking forward, the easiest indicator of something different or something off that requires your attention is looking at pace. So whether that's revenue, occupancy, ADR, if it's against historical data, if it's against the rest of the market, that to me gives you the best info to be proactive with a revenue management strategy and say, hey, for this summer, my occupancy is way up compared to last year, but my ADRs are way down. So maybe I'm underpriced and selling too quickly. That's an easy problem to fix, but gives you room to actually solve that problem before you sell out the rest of the units. Flip side, there's some scenarios there too, but I was a big proponent, even after starting at Beyond, to get pacing data to users because it really bridges that gap to say, all right, let me look ahead, let me make changes, and ultimately get the best return on my individual units.
Great.
I know, Eric, you mentioned the health score, so I do want to touch on that quickly. And that sort of takes into account pacing a bit. So the health score, we have it by individual listing, and it looks at the occupancy in the short and medium term of that listing and compares it to how the occupancy of listings nearby, so hyper local listings, and says, hey, how is the listing functioning versus the listing next door in terms of occupancy? So it's only sort of one metric, but it's a really easy indicator to say, hey, this listing's way behind, right? The market's on average 50% for the next 30 days. I'm at 15%. I need to do something. On the opposite, hey, the market's again at 50%. I'm at 90%. Did I oversell it? I need to increase the price. It's that sort of just simple logic, basically as an identifier or a flag to say, hey, this listing's not performing well. Jump in and fix it very quickly.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen on the reports. You come in, it's got them prioritized based on their health score. So you can quickly scan through, go and start to make adjustments on those that need a little help.
Yeah, and that's huge too for like going back to those large property managers. If you have 300 listings and you have 5 minutes on a Friday to review your revenue management strategy, we have to have a way to be able to say, all right, these are the most underperforming listings, attack those. Everything else is all right if you just leave it for right now, but like if you can sort by the lowest health score and start there, that will be, efficient use of time. So it's a great way to sort of prioritize that for larger portfolios as well.
So when someone starts using the dynamic pricing tool, how long does it take to start to see the benefits?
Almost immediately.
That's a good question. I think, we talk about benefits, we can just, think about exactly what people are trying to get out of it. But like, I know lots of the pricing tools beyond pricing included, like when you sign up, you can connect your account and you can get all these portfolio stats and statistics just for free instantaneously. So you can see, hey, how are all my listings doing, compared to last year, compared to 2 years back, compared to the market, and all these things like occupancy, ADR, booking lead time, everything that a revenue manager would need to know to do their job. You can see that about your portfolio right away. And I think let's even take dynamic pricing out of it for a bit. Just having those insights instantaneously and for free is huge. Like you should know how your company is doing, whether you're a dynamic pricing or beyond pricing or anyone. Like a property manager should know, and we want people to have that so they can make better decisions. So that right there alone. And then from there, going into the benefits of dynamic pricing, we push prices every day. So assuming the next day, your prices are going to be pretty much where they should be. So it's pretty much instantaneous.
Great. So as we get ready to wrap up, so what's for each of you, what's kind of one of your big goals for 2021?
It's a great question. Personal, professional,
whatever you want.
Yeah, I'll stick with professional, but I think within the vacation rental industry, I want to talk to more property managers, especially coming out of last year, and just really hone in on what everybody learned in different markets, different areas, different regions of the world, see what worked, see what didn't, and then make sure that at Beyond Pricing, we're putting in the work to sort of support those new goals, support those new initiatives, or support the types of learnings that people went through last year. More and more people adopting dynamic pricing. Obviously, we're working to continue to make our algorithm more advanced, but what else can we bring to the table? What do we have the know-how in that we can help property managers grow moving forward into the rest of the year.
Great.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think, coming out of 2020, the market's kind of I think a lot of people did very well. We recovered really well, midway through. That doesn't mean it wasn't painful, right? I know a lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of places shut down. Like we can paint sort of a rosy picture saying how great fall was, but it was painful and it was hard for a lot of people. And I think there's still that lingering feeling of being unsure with the whole business. I think people are bullish on vacation rentals, but their place in it, and even going into pricing. Are my rates high enough if fall's that great again? Are they low enough to get occupancy in the short term? Those questions, I think, just giving some reassurance to people that, like these are the right prices, you're within the realm, we can make changes very quickly, that they're sort of being looked after, but also have the tools to help them. I think that's important. I also think just sort of as an industry focus, like as I mentioned, airlines and hotels, they have decades of experience and billions upon billions of dollars built into all their algorithms for everything, right? And the vacation rental industry has a shorter start on that, and it's growing very quickly, but building out the tools and the information, the education for our industry as a whole to sort of say, we do some amazing things that we talked about. It's very unique, and let's give our industry the tools and know-how and education and just, the free data for people to make their own decisions. Because it's yes, there's some competition between listings and everything, but pretty much it's a pretty supportive industry. And it's one that I think we embrace, it's really going to grow.
Right. I agree. And talking about growing, and I always like to talk about building a team when I'm working vacation rentals and my real estate businesses. And so I think people need to have a dynamic pricing tool, or at least the data to begin helping build their team. And so if someone out in the audience said, hey, I'd like to work with you guys, how would they get in touch with you at Beyond Pricing?
Yeah. I mean, beyondpricing.com. I think both of our emails are Ryan and Jeff at beyondpricing.com. The two of us love talking shop about revenue management. I wish we had a couple more in-person conferences lined up to do that over a beer or something, but very accessible on our website. We've got great support docs in there too. You can always reach out for a demo, and we're always constantly sharing blogs and on socials, tips and tricks using our tool, managing a vacation rental in general, and then also what we're seeing in the industry. I think it's important, especially what we learned last year, is keep an eye on what's happening in the market, keep an eye on what's happening in other markets as it might impact your market in the short term. So yeah, everyone can keep up with us there. Jeff, do you have anything?
Jeff?
No, summarize it. Yeah, Jeff at beyondpricing.com. Pretty easy to remember.
Great.
You don't want to give your cell number or anything?
But anyway, thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate your time today and talking a little bit about Beyond Pricing and dynamic pricing, revenue management in the vacation rental industry today. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to Safer VR's podcast with Eric Thibodeau. If you enjoy this, I would love you to join my Facebook group, The Safer Vacation Rentals, for more of the same. You can also join our email list at www.safervrs.com.